All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual event space. My name is Allie, and I'll be your host for this evening. And as much as I wish you were all here in person, we so appreciate you all showing up to support your indie bookstores, even online. So I am so excited to be introducing Jennifer L. and Matthew Holm here to celebrate the newest book in the Baby Mouse Tales from the Locker series, Whisker Wizard. But before we get into the fun stuff, I just want to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in and, of course, for buying books. So for those of you who may not know, we are an independent bookstore with 3 locations in the Seattle area, and your support really is what keeps us here selling books, and we really love what we do. So if you also love what we do, we'd so appreciate it if you swing by and grab some copies, or if you're not local, of course, we do ship. I will be linking books in chat all evening, so it'll be super easy to go find them, and we are so grateful for your support. So while you're over on our website, I definitely encourage you all to check out some of our other upcoming events. We have an exciting roster coming up over the next few months, and if you'd like to stay in touch with our community, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly update about events and exciting releases and our online book clubs and blog posts and all sorts of goodies. And of course, you can follow us on any of the social media platforms. We are at Third Place Books, or for the kids and young adult crowd, we are at Third Place Books Kids for the quickest updates and recommendations. So we are here for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, which we very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A box, which should be either at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. It is different than the chat box, which is great for virtual applause and connecting with each other. But when it comes time for questions, do make sure those end up in the Q&A so we can most easily find them. And I believe that is all of my housekeeping. So without further ado, I am so thrilled to introduce Matthew and Jennifer L. Holm. So independently, Matthew Holm is a graphic designer and freelance writer, and Jennifer L. Holm is the author of many beloved novels, including Scott Odell Award winner Full of Beans and 3 Newbery Honor winners, Our Only May Amelia, Penny from Heaven, and Turtle in Paradise, which was recently adapted into a graphic novel. And together, they make up the brother-sister team behind the Squish series, the New York Times bestseller, Sunny Side Up, and of course, the Eisner Award-winning Baby Mouse graphic novel series. In the newest addition to the Baby Mouse Tales from the Locker series, Whisker Wizard, which came out today, so happy book birthday. Baby Mouse takes to the internet as an influencer with all of the challenges that come with that. So thank you both very much for being here. I am excited to be a fly on the wall for this conversation. If you need anything, give me a shout. I will be listening. Same goes for all of you. In the attendees list, I will be in chat, so if you need anything, let me know. And with that, I think I'll pass the stage to our authors. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are such big fans of Third Place. I have been, we've both been going to your store for years. And
many times.
We love it so much. In fact, Matt was a former Pacific Northwester, right?
I was, yes. I was in Portland for about a decade and made that drive from Portland up to Seattle to Third Place many times. But I managed to get out before the giant heat wave.
So where are you now, Matt?
So I am in New York, about an hour and a half north of New York City in the Hudson Valley, where it is leafy and green and full of random thunderstorms today. So.
Speaking
and you,
of thunderstorms,
I see something very beachy behind you. Is that your actual view out your window?
I wish. No, I am in Key West, where, speaking of thunderstorms, I just lived through Hurricane Elsa, which I guess was like Tropical Storm Elsa. But it all felt the same. It was my first time experiencing a hurricane/tropical storm in Key West.
So you've had earthquakes on the West Coast, right?
Yeah. So I live in California now, so I sleep through earthquakes, but I do not sleep through hurricanes or tropical storms because they are so loud. Just the wind howled all night, and finally around 2 or 3 in the morning, I couldn't take it, so I put in little earplugs and got some sleep. So it's been very exciting being in Key West. Yeah, so this is my obligatory classic Key West picture in the background. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about this series, Tales from the Locker. I think it was kind of fun for us to do. We're really enjoying doing it. I mean, for the big hardcore Baby Mouse fans in the audience, you know that we've done 20 Baby Mouse full-length 96-page graphic novels. And we started publishing Baby Mouse back in 2005. So that was, it feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah, we're coming up kind of on the 20-year anniversary of coming up with the idea of Baby Mouse and started working on it.
I feel old. But what was really interesting, how this series actually kind of grew organically because of our fans. Many of our fans pick up Baby Mouse in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, and eventually they grow up and go to middle school. So we've had several generations of kids who've, you know, grown up during their middle school years on Baby Mouse. And one question we were both getting a lot during events is, you know, what happens when Baby Mouse goes to middle school? And I think it was also fortuitous around the same time my own children went to middle school. So I had a lot of material, which leads us to this book, Whisker Wizard.
All right.
Dun dun dun. Matt's the art tech guy of the brother sister.
I'm going to share an amazing screen that you won't even believe. Hang on. Wait. There we go.
So that is our fabulous cover. So in this book, you know, Baby Mouse she's obsessed with her whiskers, and she unwittingly becomes an influencer. And this Tales from the Locker was actually inspired by real life. It's very funny, actually. So my daughter, who is now 14, a few years ago, she was quite obsessed with all these YouTube tutorials. And I didn't quite understand what the obsession was, but it was a lot of makeup tutorials about how, even though she doesn't wear makeup, she doesn't like to put it on. She just liked watching them. And she would watch them all the time. Her and all of her friends did. And I realized it was almost like a soap opera, them watching these makeup tutorials, because it wasn't about the makeup or styling their hair. It was about all the drama between the various makeup artists. Like one makeup artist would fight with another one and they would be kicked off Twitter, and then they'd come back and apologize and make up. And it was all hilarious once I finally, like, you know, drilled down to what the fascination was. So this was kind of inspired by Millie's venture into YouTube tutorials.
So should we run through a little taste of the book?
Absolutely. Get your whiskers on. And so my whiskers are looking very inappropriate because I was just out in a very windy Key West. Well, it's just windy now. It's dry, but it's not good for whiskers. It's very fuzzy.
Well, let's open up on Baby Mouse's world. And outside, the sun is shining. People are running through the park. The birds are singing. And it's chapter 1, bored. It had been a long week of school. Finally, the weekend had arrived, and I had big plans. Big plans. Baby Mouse, are you enjoying this beautiful weather?
Yep.
But you haven't left your bed, Baby Mouse.
I'm watching nature on a live cam.
If I could roll my eyes, I would. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Baby Mouse, my mom called. It's a beautiful day outside. Why don't you get up and have a little exercise? Ugh, I grumbled. How nice a day could it really even be? My mom came into my room and drew my curtains. I shielded my eyes from the bright sunlight. See for yourself, she chirped. Okay, I'll get up, I promised. Just please, no more light. No problem, Mom replied. But if you're not out of that bed in 10 minutes, I'm sending in Squeak. Anything but that, I replied, shooting straight up in mock horror. My mom laughed on her way out of the room. Of course, I closed the curtains and immediately went back to watching my nature cam. The squirrels were adorable. 10 minutes later, almost on the dot, how does she do that? My little brother, Squeak, poked his head into my room. He was eating a lollipop, and he had it all over his face and smeared on his hands. I pretended not to notice him, but he didn't seem to care. Mom wants you to get up and get dressed, Baby Mouse, he said, playing with my cell phone. She said I could touch all your stuff until you got out of bed. Arg! Time to start the day. After kicking Squeak out, I brushed my teeth and put on a fresh outfit. Then I climbed back into bed and started watching clips of Fabby at the Fabulous Film Awards on my tablet. Fabby is my favorite actress. She's so famous she only has one name. Fabby had starred in an old-timey black and white film recently, so I typed black and white into my browser. But that just led me down a rabbit hole of panda videos. I laughed as I watched cubs cuddle, tumble down hills, and fall asleep eating bamboo. My dad knocked on the door. Now it was his turn to pester me. Baby Mouse, he said, why don't you come spend some time with your family? He put a pile of clean laundry on the floor by my closet. If laundry is the most exciting thing going on out there, I think I'm all good, I replied. But don't you want to come down and see what's going on in the world? I can see everything worth seeing from right here, I told him, pointing to my tablet screen. Well, you know where to find us if you run out of videos to watch, he said. He left, pulling the door closed behind him. That was ridiculous, I thought. It would be impossible to watch all the videos in the world. Didn't he know more were being uploaded all the time? But the truth was that I was bored.
Everything is so boring.
Maybe go outside and get some fresh air?
That's even more boring.
Instead, I started watching infomercials.
Save time in the morning with the new 2-in-1 brush brush. With these self-popping corn kernels, popcorn making is a breeze.
Pop, pop.
Hate hand washing your clothes? Now you don't have to.
I lazily scrolled down my screen. Just then, something caught my eye. A do-it-yourself whisker formula. Now, I had been using basic whiskers for as long as I could remember. Just like my mom, and her mom, and probably her mom before that. I had been trying to convince my mom to buy something new and exciting for our whiskers, but she wouldn't budge. Why be special when you can be basic, she always replied, quoting the commercial. She insisted on using the same product year after year. Even the packaging looked 100 years old. Still, even though Mom wouldn't buy anything new, she never said I couldn't make my own whisker formula from a recipe. And if the recipe was on the internet, it had to be legit, right? I looked more closely at the description. It was very intriguing.
Green Beauty Blog, make your own natural whisker serum with household ingredients. Lemon, mustard, vinegar, mayonnaise.
Warning, parental guidance recommended. Now that sounded awesome. Besides, all those ingredients sounded safe-ish. Most of them we had in our kitchen cabinets. I decided to give it a try. I jumped out of bed and ran downstairs. Coming to help? Dad exclaimed as I ran by. He and Mom were still folding clothes in the living room. Sorry, busy, I said. I had whisker serum to make. First, I needed to gather the ingredients, which was a lot harder than I had expected. It was Saturday, and grocery shopping day was Sunday, so the pantry was pretty bare. There was a lot of oatmeal. What was it with parents and oatmeal? And a half-finished box of stale granola. I also just discovered several cans of soup that nobody liked, mostly cream of mushroom and split pea. There was no way split pea soup should go in anything, so I gave up on the pantry and looked around. Baby Mouse, those are just for decoration. They're plastic.
Blah.
But I finally found a real lemon in the produce drawer, hidden behind a bag of yucky-looking parsley. On to the mustard. I opened the refrigerator and looked inside.
It's a lot of different kinds of mustard.
There are many mustards out there. I checked the recipe, but it didn't specify which type to use. Perplexed, I took a little of each just to be safe. Plop! Into the mixing bowl went all the mustards. I had the same problem with the vinegar. I opened a cabinet and saw all different types. Distilled white vinegar, red vinegar, rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and malt vinegar. I could only reach one of them, or it would have been hard to choose. It was distilled white vinegar, in case you were wondering. Finally, I was almost done. The last item was going to be easy, mayonnaise. I knew that my dad had just bought some. I searched the fridge, but the bottle wasn't where it usually was. I looked around the kitchen without any success. Dad, I called, do you know where the mayo is? In here, Squeak replied from the dining room. I hurried into the dining room, where Squeak was surrounded by mutilated plastic lemons. I was just in time to see him squeeze the last of the mayo onto his sandwich. No! I yelled, scrabbling toward him. It was almost in slow motion, as I saw my chance to make the serum slip away onto a disgusting mess of peanut butter and potato chips. Blurp! I took the bottle from him and did my best to squeeze more out, but it wasn't going to be easy. It didn't work, so I applied more pressure. Soon I had rigged up a contraption consisting of a giant encyclopedia, my mom's hand weights, and a bowling ball to try to get the last drops of mayo out. Man, that's a whole lot of work for whisker care. But Babymouse looks pretty tough there. She can hoist a cinder block. No luck. I went back to see if I could get some from Squeak's sandwich, but he was just finishing his last bite. He showed me how it was all over his face and fingers. You can have some of my leftover mayo. Yuck. I gagged, avoiding him. But I wasn't giving up yet. All I needed to do was find a mayo-like substance somewhere in the kitchen. I looked through the refrigerator. There were dozens of jars, bottles, and tubes full of condiments. Lots of them were too hard to open. A bunch were super smelly, and one was even expired. At least it smelled expired. It was labeled sour cream. Why would anyone buy cream that was already sour? It didn't make sense. But on I went, narrowing down my options. The finalists on my list were vanilla yogurt, French onion dip, ranch dressing, anchovy paste, and horseradish. Decisions. I picked up the horseradish bottle. It looked old, really old. In fact, the label on the back was so faded that I couldn't read the ingredients. I guess that should have been a sign it was expired and I shouldn't use it, but I did like horses an awful lot. And from what I could remember, they usually had smooth, sleek hair, so I decided to go with that. Wink. I dumped the horseradish into the bowl with the other ingredients. Man, I thought the anchovy paste smelled bad. The horseradish was even worse. When all the ingredients were mixed together, the concoction reminded me of a bubbling swamp. Not a good thing. But I had already spent over an hour making the recipe, so I couldn't stop now. I brought the homemade serum up to the bathroom and closed the door. My whiz-bang was in my pocket, so I decided to take a quick before pic. Here goes nothing, I said to no one in particular. I carefully applied a large portion of the gloop to my whiskers. I set my whiz-bang timer for 3 minutes as instructed by the recipe. The smell was so terrible that I gagged a little. My eyes burned like I was cutting into an onion, but I soon forgot all about my eyes stinging because my whiskers started burning too. Maybe that's why they put the warning label under the recipe? I tried to hold my breath as I waited. Finally, the timer reached 0. Beep, beep, beep. I'd never been so happy to hear an alarm go off in my entire life. And this is just a little recap of Babymouse and alarms.
Ring!
Smash! Beep, 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 beep. Crash!
Chime, 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 chime. Crack.
Crack! Cock-a-doodle! Gawk! I scrubbed the mess off my face as quickly as I could. As soon as I'd washed it all off, I stared in the mirror. My face looked different, all right, but that was mostly because my cheeks were bright red and swollen. Despite that, I attempted to style my whiskers. I decided to get creative, twisting them around and around until they stayed put. Finally, I came up with an interesting style. I snapped a selfie, my after, so I could send 2 pics to my friends. I logged on to my group chat with Penny, Georgie, Wilson, and Ducky to see what they thought of my new look. Check out my new look! Smiley face. Fancy. What do you call it?
The twist.
I was glad Penny liked my look, but I had very little time to chat because I suddenly heard a scream downstairs. Babymouse! My mom yelled. Come down here this instant! I gulped, remembering the huge mess I had made in the kitchen. Coming! I yelled back. A minute later, I was in the pantry getting cleaning supplies. After tripping over the broom and mop, I reached up to the top shelf to grab the paper towels. That's when I saw it.
Typical. Mayo was right there the whole time.
The whole time.
So I kind of went down the rabbit hole with all these natural, using natural ingredients as like makeup and hair products. Mostly because when I was growing up, there was a very popular thing to do with your hair, which was just old school to lighten your hair, was to just squeeze lemon juice on your hair, and it actually would lighten your hair. So I started looking up all different kinds of ways, you know, Babymouse could put things on her whisker like mayonnaise. And it's funny because a lot of these things do work. And I actually was doing one of these this morning. So, you know, I have my bathing suit is blue and white I brought down here. And I'm very good. I put a lot of suntan lotion on. I don't want to get burned. And it was starting to yellow. I feel like I'm Martha Stewart. It was all starting to yellow along where it hit my skin. And so I went on the internet and I read, how do I get suntan lotion off of my bathing suit? And it said, put it in baking soda. So I soaked it in baking soda for 2 hours. Then I rinsed it off. And then I rinsed it in, then it was soaking it in vinegar. So it worked though. So sometimes these little home remedies actually do work. I'm not saying you should put mayonnaise on your hair, but
definitely not horseradish.
Yeah, definitely not horseradish. So Matt, what was one of the challenges for you about doing this book?
Well, one of the things was just coming up with all of these crazy whisker styles. I mean, we were kicking back and forth on what the different whiskers might look like. And one thing, when you're talking about a comic before it's drawn, you know, you can have these ideas like, oh, the whisker will look like a musical note, or it'll look like, you know, a crazy spiral or something. But then to actually execute that is a little difficult because it has to, you know, attach to her face and be a certain length so it looks like the whisker and everything else. So that was one thing, was just trying to come up with all the different whisker styles. Let me see if I can.
What I was gonna say, what was your favorite? Well, why don't we'll look for some whisker styles.
Okay, so we have at a certain point here. Let me start this share. At a certain point, Babymouse, because now she's an influencer and she's got, you know, she has to fill space on her feed all the time. So she starts coming up with different whisker styles that she could be doing. So she's sitting in class and instead of, you know, taking notes, she's doodling and brainstorming different whisker ideas. So she's in math class, so she comes up with protractor whiskers. That's pretty good. And we had to get the actual angle, of course, that the protractor's measuring. Amoeba whiskers, that was a good one with a little nod to our amoeba book Squish here in this outline.
Which is on HBO Max. Everybody check out Squish.
Woohoo, check out Squish. There's dirty sneaker whiskers. So he had to make the sneaker. And then, of course, the smelliness coming up from it.
That's gym class, obviously.
Yes. And then unfortunately, she's just iterating on her twists. So there's the corkscrew with little corkscrew whiskers. There's the DNA strand.
That was the best one, actually, I think.
I guess she was in bio class. And then the spiral staircase as well. Oh.
Very thoughtful. Very good.
Yeah, so that was fun to do. And the other thing that was fun was, of course, just coming up with having to figure out 10,000 different beauty product bottles. you know, I'm just like,
I bet you
okay,
never thought you would have to come up with beauty
no,
products.
I never imagined. So, and of course, names for them, you know, top whiskers, most suave, you know, extreme style. And then, yes, all sorts of product design. Luckily, I mean, I did a little bit of graphic design in my earlier years, but I've never done as much graphic design as I've done on these books, because not only have I had to make things like all of the product designs for that, but I'm constantly having to design new websites for Babymouse to go on, new social media apps, and the whole interface for that, and what that would look like, all the little chat bubbles and everything like that they would use on the screens. So yeah, it's a lot of graphic design doing this book.
And it was kind of fun for me too. So my previous career before I became a kids author was I worked in advertising. And I worked on quite a few beauty accounts, you know, for different kinds of beauty products like lotions and soaps and things. So I felt like I brought my advertising career to bear on this book. It all paid off for both of us.
Years of research for this book.
And I think what's fun, I mean, you have to read the book, but of course, I think what's fun about it is, and I do think this happens in social media a lot, is that somebody might just start a blog or post something just for fun, and then it catches on, and then it becomes a thing, and they become an influencer, and they feel obliged to start posting every day. You know, I sort of fell into looking at those kind of blogs when I first had kids. There were a lot of mommy blogs, which would show like mothers and like perfect clothes with babies and beautiful little sailor suits and just looking charming. And meanwhile, I looked like I hadn't slept for a week, which I probably hadn't. And both of my kids would spit up milk, and they look like a disaster. So I guess I was really attracted to them, probably the same way that kids are, because it was like this fantasy world that doesn't actually exist anywhere of what possibly, you know, can be. So.
Oh, I did, and my wife Cindy, she's in fashion and stuff, and so one thing she did teach me though is like when you're showing Babymouse showing a new product, the way you have to do it is you have to hold your hand up, and then you hold like the lipstick case or whatever in front of your hand as they're showing it. So I had to draw Babymouse doing that a couple times for like the whiskers mascara styling or something like that.
Which I think is pretty important. You know, you have to, you know, present the products in all the right way, and because like I know now that influencers, when they you know, they reach a certain level, like, you know, the Kardashians, like Khloe Kardashian or whoever, Kim Kardashian, they are in fact deluged with products. People are sending those things all the time, of things that they want them to, you know, kind of say that they love. And so if they say they love it, that it might be a good thing.
I'm trying to see if I can find the we show Babymouse at a certain point going through these stages and being inundated with new products. Oh, there's so much book.
Yeah, so I think what was really fun about these books is that there were a lot of work, but they were a different kind of work than the traditional Babymouse books, which were just, you know, pure comics. These were balancing the text with these comics throughout. Some are full page spreads like this one. I love the full page spreads, actually.
Yeah, it's fun to just sort of break out and just do an entire thing. And it's almost like a different, it's almost like we get to do different types of comics. Like, so this feels almost like from the newspaper comic pages, like the one panel comics where, you know, instead of showing a sequence of different events over a bunch of panels, everything's happening all at once, like in a Far Side comic or something.
Exactly.
You know? But then we do also have a couple where we break it out into multiple panels, like a traditional comic. Like here, Babymouse tries a whisker product that unfortunately dissolves your whiskers.
And you know, so what's funny now is also that my daughter and I are pretty much both Babymouse, because now she's kind of interested in beauty products. So we both belong to these various, you know, like subscription clubs. We both get like a monthly makeup. We get one from Ipsy and one from Birchbox. She gets one and I get one. And so you know, you get these products and sometimes there's a good reaction, trying random things on, and you never know how things are going to turn out. So we both have pretty fair skin, so it's usually not good for these radical creams and lotions. But we just go for it sometimes, you know. It's like free samples. You can't resist. So let's see. I wonder if there are do we have any questions from our audience? I cannot see my Q&A box. Let me see. We've got a very chill audience tonight, which is okay.
That is fine. It is the summer. We understand.
It was just the 4. We've got some participants, but they're very shy.
Yes.
I'm not seeing any.
So what are we working on now, Jenny?
Yes. So Matt, tell me about what is going on now. So, well, there's a couple things going on. So I'm in Key West, and one of the fun things I get to promote is I have a new graphic novel. I'm going to go off screen and get it. Here, why don't you?
Yeah, go for it.
Amuse the audience. I'll be right back.
Yes. So Jenny, normally pretty much all of my work is with Jenny, because when you're the artist on a graphic novel, it takes up a tremendous amount of time. It just takes a very long time to draw all of those pages. But this will be one of the first times that Jenny is working with a different illustrator for a graphic novel. Well, already has worked with a different illustrator for a graphic novel.
Because Matt's so busy.
I know. She's got me doing all of these product designs.
I need to have, exactly. That's the problem. We need to clone you. So I'm really lucky. I've been asked for years by a lot of readers to do graphic novel of Turtle in Paradise. And so Savannah Guanasho, she's an amazing creator. She did Bloom. You should check it out. It's beautiful. She did the Turtle in Paradise graphic novel. And it is it's absolutely gorgeous. It perfectly captures the colors in Key West. And it was really strange because one of the big moments in the book is there's a hurricane. And I just lived through a hurricane. So when I wrote about the hurricane in the book, I had not experienced one. And now I realized it was probably even worse. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking to some kids down here about Turtle in Paradise. And then what do we have coming out in the fall, Matt?
Well, so we do have another installment of the Sunny Side Up series, one where she is on summer break, as all of us are right now. Well, some of us more than others.
Draw.
And I know. Draw. And I can grab that. Hold on a second.
Yeah, so the next Sunny book, it picks up right after Sunny Rolls the Dice, and this is called Sunny Makes a Splash. And in it, Sunny, it's kind of a sleepy summer. It starts out as a sleepy summer, book. Sunny is home for the summer, and most of her friends have gone away to visit grandparents or maybe going to the lake or something. And so she's home and bored. And she ends up sort of through an accident getting a job at the snack bar at the local swimming pool. And she becomes closer friends with a schoolmate named Tony. And they kind of watch all the antics of the lifeguards and how a public swimming pool works. And so that was really fun to write, especially the best part was the ice cream. Because when I was growing up, there were like so many cool ice creams. There was like ice cream that had like bubble gum at the bottom.
And the thing was like the ice cream you got at home, like from the grocery store, was extremely boring. Plain. It would just be in like a big rectangular box. And like we always got Breyers, which no offense to the Breyers fans out there in Philly, but it tastes very natural and healthy for you somehow and not a lot of fun. All the fun stuff was either at the pool where you go to the snack bar or at the ice cream truck zipping around your neighborhood in the evenings.
Yeah.
So you had like the Rocket Pops, which were like multicolored popsicles. You had the Cannonball with the little gumball at the bottom of the entire thing that you ate.
That was the best.
Yeah. It was like you were all done and then you got gum at the end.
Yeah.
It's like a little surprise.
So it's kind of like a fun walk down memory lane. And at one point in my adolescence, I guess like when I was around, I'm trying to remember, 15, I was actually a lifeguard at a public swimming pool. And that was very exciting because you would think, you know, lifeguards, we mostly are saving people by diving into the pool and rescuing drowning people. But actually I spent almost the entirety of every day screaming at children because I would scream, "Don't run," because it was a huge concrete pool with concrete sidewalks. And when you have water and concrete and kids run, they just spin out and then it's bad. So to this
Lots
day,
of skinned knees.
you know, if I see a child running out of pool, I will be that annoying adult who will say, "Walk, don't run," because I was so ingrained in my head. So yeah, so check out the new Sunny book. So that'll be really fun.
And then we are working on a top secret Baby Mouse project. Baby Mouse
Yes.
continues. So we can say it's another graphic novel of Baby Mouse, like straight up graphic novel. So so stay tuned. But it's going to be a little different, a little bigger, a little crazier.
We have a Q&A. Let me open it. Hang on.
Oh, I think we just answered it.
Oh, Alicia. Alicia has the cutest baby in the universe. Thank you for asking, Alicia.
Yes.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this.
Well, I have a quick question, if you don't
Go for
mind.
it.
Go for it.
Wonderful. So you guys have been you've been working together on projects for a long time. What is that process and experience like? Do you ever disagree? Do you fight? Or is it just roses and daisies the whole way?
Roses and daisies. Roses and daisies.
Wonderful.
You know, you don't need to. The thing is, you don't need to fight when there's just a ton of work that needs to be done. Like that is really the key is having way too much work to do. So you know, at a certain point, we were doing 4 graphic novels a year, like 2 Baby Mouse books and 2 Squish books every year, and there was not time for disagreement. So generally, if one of us says, you know, this scene isn't working, whether it's in the writing or in the art, the other one just says, okay, that must mean that I did something wrong. And the reader is going to also say it's not working. So we should try to fix it. So it's always faster to just fix the thing than it is to get into an argument over whatever, you know, who cares? Make it work.
And I think we also came to creating graphic novels with that attitude because we had both worked in industry before. So I'd worked in advertising where I was used to working with creative people and disagreeing and learning to take criticism very well. Matt had worked in publishing and magazines. And so he had actually been an editor telling people to change things. So I think one of the signs of growth as a creative person, either as an artist or a writer or both, is that you learn to take criticism, not because they don't like what you've done, but they're pointing out something that they don't understand. It's not just quite working. So you see it turns out to be a good thing.
Yeah, and one of the things as the thing with making a book is that, especially if you're doing a novel or something on your own, or if you're a single person creating the entire graphic novel by yourself, it's a very lonely job. It's very hard. It's just you against this project that you're doing. It's a little easier because there's 2 of us. So it's nice, you know, when I do some work and I send it off to Jenny and then she does some work on it and sends it back to me. And it's the same thing if we give it to our editors and they say, you know, this thing should be fixed. And it's like, oh, thank you. Someone else is working on this book. Like, that's so nice. It's like having an extra helping hand to do this very big project. So even when they're telling you things that need to be fixed, you're like, that's great. I never would have noticed that because I'm so busy with everything else that's going on with this.
Here we have another Alicia question. Do you have an idea for a book, but have just never written it because you didn't know if it would be a hit? So you never know if a book is going to be a hit.
Well, the first thing to never worry about is we have never any idea if a book is going to be well received or not.
That is just, that is, you can never predict that. I don't really have a book that we haven't written together.
I don't think so. I mean, I barely have time to
I know,
stop and think about stuff.
I can't think ahead.
Whenever we come up with something, I mean, there are books that we've done or that we're thinking about or whatever, but it's usually, honestly, it's about a 4 or 5 year process just to get started working on a book from the time we first conceive of it until it gets close to coming out, you know? So like, just even going to do this Baby Mouse in middle school with Tales from the Locker series, you know, that gestated for a long time. That we were thinking about that for 5 or 6 years about how to do that, what the format would look like, what kind of stories it would be, how old she would be, et cetera, et cetera. It took a really long time to sort that out. We did the Evil Princess and the Brave Knight books that have come out recently, which are picture books. And that took about 4 or 5 years to really get a handle on that from the time we came up with the initial idea and then worked on it. So just even when we have an idea that we think might be a good book, it takes forever just to even get to the point where we've sort of gotten a handle on how it should go.
Yeah, I mean, and you honestly, you just never know. I mean, Baby Mouse came out in 2005, and there weren't really very many graphic novels out then, but I don't feel like it didn't really hit its stride till maybe 5 or 6 years later. And then, you know, sometimes books just find their audience when they find their audience. So you never know.
And then in the chat, I see we have a question from Sandy Mullis. Do you have any advice to elementary kids who want to be writers?
So I do. So I think one of the best things to do to become a writer, besides reading, which I think we all know is probably a good thing. I think it can be very intimidating to try to just sit down and write something yourself. And my daughter I've been kind of looking to how she is growing up, which is she's going to a fine arts school, and I'm friends with her art teacher, and we talk about how, you know, artists, the basics of how artists become artists. And what they often do is they copy other great artists. They don't just say, here, draw a great piece of art, because they don't have the basics. They don't know how to draw. They don't know how to color. They don't know how to shade. They don't know how to do dimension or perspective or anything. So they learn all these techniques by copying great artists. And I think if you do a similar thing as writing, you will pick up the same skills. And so I think writing fan fiction is a great way. So you're doing the same thing that great artists have been doing for hundreds of years. Painters have done that for hundreds of years, and just apply it to writing. So if you like a kind of book, you know, if you like Babymouse, write another chapter for Babymouse, write another chapter for Harry Potter or for Dogman. And you'll learn all the same skills that you're going to need to be a writer someday. And eventually you'll feel confident and you'll want to write something that has your own flair to it and your own characters.
Yeah, it is funny that sometimes, just like sometimes people have looked down upon comics as not, you know, real writing or real reading or worth doing or whatever. Same thing with fan fiction. It gets like kind of a bad rap sometimes as being like not real writing, but it's exactly how everything else is done. You know, that's how you learn to do art. It's how, I mean, it's literally how, if people are making screenplays or writing TV episodes, they call it doing a spec script, a speculation script. You know, you write it as if it was an episode in that TV series that you want to write for, you know? And so same thing, you're writing an episode of an existing book that's out there. There's nothing wrong with that. And
I think it's good because you're already working within a framework. So it's not overwhelming. So you have you have characters that, you know, that the child has to have a pretty good grip on those characters and how they behave. And then they can come up with a new, you know, story arc for them. But they've got some of the things already figured out, like the world, the characters, and then they don't have to figure out too much beyond that, except just maybe the story structure.
Yeah, and I do find, especially when I talk to young students when we do school visits and things like that, and they spend a lot of time coming up with characters and character design and thinking about every aspect of this character and everything, but they don't necessarily ever start an actual story with those characters.
Exactly.
So it's kind of cool to have a ready-made scenario, ready-made characters with personality traits and backstories between the characters. Like, that's the really important thing, is having characters interact with each other. Like, that's really where your story starts to come from. So it's a good head start.
But good question. Thank you.
And we do have a new question from Catherine Button. How does your writing process change, if it does, when you write historical fiction compared to writing the text for a graphic novel?
So it's much easier writing the graphic novel generally, because if I get stuck, I can just ping Matt. But I have been doing the same thing for both just any novel and for the graphic novels lately. And I started this a couple years ago because we get writer's block. It is what it is. It ironically does not get easier the longer you write. The only thing that gets easier is you know the process and you know the time that it's going to take and that you have to carve out hours in your day.
You know the parts that are not going to be fun, and you're just going to do them anyway.
Exactly. The first draft is never fun for me. So what I do now is I doodle before I don't write outlines, but I doodle a general story arc. So I'll just get a piece of paper and I'll draw like just an arc, like a rainbow. And it's a beginning, middle, end. And then I'll just sit there and doodle ideas that I have. And obviously I am not an artist like Matt. Took no art classes. So it's all stick figures. And I'll just start drawing little stick figure ideas, for instance. So for my latest novel, The Lion of Mars, the main character's name is Belle, so I'll draw a stick figure of Belle. I'll decide, does he have a pet? Should it be a cat? Should it be a dog? And I'll do this over a couple of days. And then I'll go and adjust it. I'll cross off things that don't quite make sense and keep things that I like. And then I'll add on to it as I write, and I'll just tape it by my desk. And what happens is that it's by no means a finished outline or even a great outline, but it's a basic map for when I get stuck. I think what students, and I have even forgotten, was that when we were learning to drive, we didn't have Google Maps or Waze. We had to actually physically look at a road map. And that actually really helps. I think, visually looking at something helps you get somewhere. And so it's always reassuring to me when I'm stuck. I can just look at, if I have a couple of things figured out, a couple points from here to there, and seeing it helps me to figure out how to get to those beats. So I think having students just get a piece of scrap paper and doodle ideas before they start writing will make it less stressful for them.
Yeah, and with the difference in drawing in working out the sketches for the historical fiction, like Sunny Side Up, which takes place in the 1970s, versus like a Babymouse, which is, a fantasy, a sort of a little twist on our world where it's just all mice and everything's a little goofier and doesn't have to be as rigid. It's just, I have to take explicit notes and research every single thing I'm drawing, so I'm constantly going on Google image search and finding photos of cars from specific years that have to be in the scene, or clothes from old Sears catalogs. And so it's just constantly taking little snapshots of everything. And again, working in a real space versus like Babymouse, where she lives in a world where there's like desks and endless hallways with lockers in them and that sort of stuff. And of course, her fantasy world where anything happens, I have to actually sort of like map out what the houses and buildings in Sunny's world look like. So actually, I have up on my wall here, when I was designing the snack bar, I had to like draw out a little floor plan. So I have like, the front view of the snack bar, and then like there's what the above floor plan looks like, and that's kind of how it would be sketched out. So I could sort of figure out where everything would go, and as I'm drawing it from all these different angles, it's like I've built a little set design of some sort. So it makes it's a little less loosey-goosey for doing the historical fiction, and a little bit more like building a real version of the world in there.
Yep.
Cool.
So I have one more question, or maybe two. If anybody else has any questions, now is the time. We would absolutely love to hear you. If not, that's okay. But my question is what do you love about writing for kids?
I mean, I feel like my most memorable years were my elementary school years and my middle school years. I remember them very sharply. For some reason, I've completely blocked out high school. So, I mean, I suppose I could do a YA book in the future, but it's not my natural place. So I also love writing for kids because they're just very honest. If they don't like your book, they're going to tell you. They're very frank. So I really appreciate that.
Also, I just love I always think back to what it was like for me as a kid reading books at that point, and or at least I would just be completely consumed with the book and you might reread it like 18 times.
Yep.
And you carry it around, and it's, I never think of, I mean, maybe to our detriment as picture book creators, I don't generally think of the reading aloud, even with a parent or a child, or reading to a crowd as a librarian, etc. And what that experience, that sort of group experience, I always think of like the personal experience of one kid with a book and what that's like for them to like sort of fall into that little world. So it's great to sort of tap into that and think about what are they going to be experiencing as they're in this, what little things on the page are they going to obsess over and look at 1,000 times, like when I was a kid and was reading through books and obsessed over just little weird details 1,000 times, you know. So it's fun to sort of put yourself into that mode and just let the world drop away for that.
Totally. So my last question, which is my favorite question, and it, you know, if this is putting you on the spot, if you're, you know, busy, don't worry, no worries. But what are you reading, or what is the last book that you loved?
So I would say the last book I really loved was an amazing graphic novel called Twins by Varian Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
He is a pal. But it is such a good graphic novel, and it's about siblings, and obviously we are siblings. So yeah. I love that he writes about like the reality of siblings growing up, and pretty much siblings kind of in the middle school environment. It's really fun.
I know, like that was the one that I just worked through on my to be read list of my giant stack of graphic novels that are out there, because you know, again, when we started out, there weren't that many, and now there's so many that I cannot get through them all as they're coming out. So yeah, that's the one to read, guys.
Yeah, it's so cute. I can second that. So I think that this is just about where we're gonna call it an evening. Thank you both so much for joining us and for having this great conversation and reading aloud. I love hearing books in the author's voice. Audience members, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for showing up on this warm Tuesday. Of course, come on in, come grab books. We'd love to see you. Or if you're not local, definitely go and follow any of the many links. Now is the time, because I'm about to push end on this call. So just go ahead and scroll up, find the books that you're looking for, and click through those. And I think that this is where we say goodnight. So one more huge thank you from all of us to all of you. And I think this is where we let the awkward waving commence.
Bye.
Awkward waving. Goodbye, guys.
Have a great summer.
Good night, everyone.